Enuncia is dubbed the language of creation. Could it have been the language of the old ones? Let's look into that by examining the evidence and see what it shows us. And welcome friends to another 40k video. How do you understand what's in the words of creation? We know that a working grammar has been worked on in the past. They're weaving it from our own known language bases and not going through some ancient text. In Warhammer, Kiss tells us, yes, they're taking raw language, raw symbols, alphabet characters, scripts, syllables, numerals, number bases, etymons and word roots, syntax and grammar structures, and they're breaking it right down to the smallest units, to phonemes and morphemes, which they are then systematically recombining at random into every conceivable permutation in any way they can. Ciphering, deciphering, transliterating, substituting, they're forcing the raw material through patterns of anagram, acrostic, pangram, hell, rhymes for all I know. At the most basic level, they're taking every morpheme and trying it against every other possible combination of morphemes. And every now and then, they get a strike. They get a piece of Enuncia that they can identify and secure into, well, I suppose they are producing some kind of primer program. Scribes and cogitators are brought in to help with this. Enuncia is the name ancient scholars gave to a lost, pre-human language, Master Unworth. Its origins and use may have associations to the warp itself or to antique super races that may have once existed in our cosmos. Tiny scraps of it have occasionally been discovered. We don't know how it was created originally or even used. It's possible the source of the arts we now understand as magic. Simply put, the language was a tool, an instrument. By the power of words alone, the fabric of reality could be changed, transformed, controlled, manipulated, reshaped. It was a fundamental device of creation or destruction, Kiss added. It's revealed Kiss uses it to control a jailer to let his prisoners out. Whoever masters this will be able to do whatever they like. So how powerful is a single word of it? It was used to introduce scrap code into a defense network, and by a perpetual in the End and the Death Part 3 to hold off an ascended Horus Lupercal for a few key moments. And for an example of its dangerous side, if not said properly, seeing an example on a bas relief, Moloch tries to say a word, and the cranium of the servitor unit next to him burst in a splatter of gore, brain matter and spinning metal fragments. Moloch's mouth began to stream with blood. The other servitor went berserk and started to beat its forehead against the far wall of the chamber, like Dobby from Harry Potter perhaps. It carried on until its head smashed and came off. Moloch staggered backwards, retching up blood. He spat out one of his own front teeth, and that's just a word. That's how much damage it can do. And it gets even more powerful than that. The Cognitae are trying to attempt to build a tower etched in Enuncia and are stopped in this act by the Master of Mankind and his perpetual ally. We are told words covered every inch of the floor, walls and domed ceiling. Above and beyond it, a tower rose to the sky, reaching up to touch heaven. Those taking in the ceremony speak unwords, hurting the soldiers that try to stop the ceremony. So we know it can be spoken and also written. The purpose of the tower was to somehow elevate humanity, unify people. They built their tower, and up it went, and out there their words spread across the lands. Cultures, people, language, art, they changed it all tells us. And he says that Enuncia, it wasn't called that back then. Things didn't really have the names they picked up later. Enotian, glossolalia, Enuncia, Babel. In some ways, that was the problem. Names, concepts, power, illumination, it all started here in the fallout, like everything else. The primordial language of creation, breathed John Grammaticus, the first symbol system to span the gap between reality and infinity, and they just had it carved on the walls like kids' graffiti on a hab. A near complete lexicon, why, said all. The same as everyone else with power, to change things. They wanted to elevate humanity, or at least that was what they said. Ideas, art, knowledge, power, all of it. Spread it, channel it, master it, and it would make humanity something bright and shining. They wanted to unlock potential. It sounds a lot like the Emperor and his plans to usher humanity into becoming a psychic race and hide them in the webway to protect them from the ruinous powers, but shortcutting a lot of it using Enuncia. The idea was to unite us through a shared ideal, art, knowledge. The idea was that over time, the knowledge and understanding would spread out, that we would all be illuminated. Lovely ideal. I'm guessing the reality was less lovely. Yes, cities turned to ash and salt. Predator ideas, words that once you heard them would sink into the brain and kill you if you started to think the wrong thought. So it will allow a single person or group a very deep level of control, even dipping into the mind and censoring that, putting rules in place that will endanger you if you cross them. What does this draw on? I mean, the warp is the obvious one, and it makes sense. The warp lets psychics change reality, and so perhaps this is similar, but on a much deeper, more complex level. But it could still theoretically be powered from the same place. In the Horus Heresy Book 8, Malevolence, a little more lore is given on Enuncia. I'll read that to you now, and then we'll come to the original question. All but hidden underneath the surface of the presence, which all sentient life project into the warp. There is a certain kind of sound which can be spoken, an incantation. In the Halo Stars it is called the tongue of creation. On Artadain, the voice of God, and on Drusen, the language of unmaking. The Eldar are said to know it and fear it, as it is the vernacular of the Old Ones. Only a few words of the axiom are known, for to attempt to reconstruct the entire lexicon is forbidden and would be beyond the combined capabilities of every data scribe in a star system. When spoken aloud in no more than a whisper, a practitioner can bend the fabric of reality and send shockwaves through the immaterium. And again, bending, changing reality, affecting time and dimensions, that seems very much like a warp thing to me. And the book goes on. However, even a small slip of the tongue, or mistaken raising of the voice, in anger can break reality and the speaker both, and each time such sounds are spoken, they change in meaning. Now let's briefly, and I mean briefly, go over who are the Old Ones, and see if the language might be tied to them. So who are they? They ruled the Milky Way. They were perhaps the first species. They made the webway and many races, such as the Eldari, and they became involved in a war between the Satan and the Necrontyr. And we are told in Forgebane, the Old Ones wielded technology that was far superior and sculpted the heavens at will. Does Enuncia fit in with that idea? I think it can. In the section we just covered, we learned the Eldar call it the vernacular of the Old Ones. Vernacular being the language or dialect spoken by the ordinary people in a particular country or region. So they speak Enuncia, is the implication there. We are told that they had technology that could shape the heavens at will. Enuncia would let them do that, or make technology with it, using it, for certain tasks. So I think it could be likely, but if few things stick out, I don't see how the Satan or the Necrontyr could have stood up to a race that had mastered Enuncia to change reality around them. And why would they need supplicant races such as the Eldari to aid them? So I conclude they could have had some knowledge of it, but they could not have mastered it. It must have been in small, limited amounts, so that small things could be accomplished. So the Eldar are required, and so that they don't just walk over the Satan and Necrontyr by muttering a few unwords. So now I turn things over to you. Let me know what you think. Do you find the evidence here compelling that the Old Ones might have spoken Enuncia? Or do you think this is a stupid idea? Let me know below.